This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. This is such good shit. What do you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those shows today. For everybody out there that has the attention span of a squirrel and cannot indulge in 2-hour-long discussions, well, you're in for a treat then, because you ain't getting one with this FSWR show. So as we talked about last week, Retro Raw was put on the back burner for WWF's March to WrestleMania card that they ran the Sunday prior to the actual Mania event. It's still on the docket for us to talk about in full next week, the WrestleMania 10 discussion. I am actually in the process of watching it at this moment, as I am recording. No, I'm just kidding. Now, I'm about halfway through the show now, but decided to take a break and go ahead and record this show so I can do some early editing and get this up in a timely manner on Monday. My recording process is very particular. It is not done in one day, because I'm what you would call a very busy man. Got a lot of stuff I juggle and balance throughout the week, so yeah, this is a multi-step process. Yet somehow I have the time to come on here and complain about modern wrestling every single week. Funny how that works. And if you're checking this out for the first time, now you know what to do. Subscribe, comment, like, smash, swipe, dab, whatever the cool kids do to engage on social media these days. Lord knows I want to find out. I remember when twerking was the thing. It's been eons since that was popular. But I have seen the TikTok nightmare videos. That's a whole other dark side of the internet that I don't even want to think about engaging in. Luckily for me, I keep things very simple with my internet exposure. For me, it's YouTube, occasional Rumble, some audio podcasts here and there, email. I think that's about it. Sometimes I might engage in other dubious activities that I may or may not want to disclose to the public. You can all ponder that one while we move on with today's topics. And by topics plural, I mean Friday Night SmackDown. Because again, there was no Retro Raw show to review for this week, which probably worked out in my favor because they gave me a little bit more free time on Sunday to pre-plan my WrestleMania 10 breakdown. And then next week I can just watch Retro Raw and SmackDown and not feel pressed for time trying to cram everything in 2 days. Because it's a lot of material. It always is with wrestling. So this will definitely be a shorter show than normal. Quite frankly, I'm all right with that. So, what do you say we just dive headfirst into this bad boy and see what the blue brand perpetrated on the television screen this week? And last time I did one of these solo reviews, I ended up subjecting myself to watching the entire 2-hour program. No fast forwarding, no skipping, no me walking out of the room to take a leak, fix a sandwich, basically doing everything except watching what was happening on the TV screen. And it was torturous, it was humiliating, it was degrading. I wanted to put a paper bag over my head the minute the show was over. Just wanted to crawl underneath a bed and never show my face in this world again. And under normal circumstances, because I hate myself, I was actually contemplating doing the same exact thing this weekend. Because apparently I didn't learn my lesson the first go around. But this time I had an excuse. And again, that excuse was that I needed to carve out a little bit of more time to sit down and watch the full WrestleMania 10 show. And I'm still not done watching it as we speak. So I decided to stick with the normal format when I watch these SmackDown shows. No taking the important stuff, glossing over the lesser important stuff, skipping pretty much anything involving the girls if it doesn't actively involve Rhea Ripley, and skipping over most of the underneath material if it doesn't directly involve LA Knight and or Dominic Mysterio, both of whom were actually on the show this week in featured capacities. And it was probably the right approach to take for this one because, well, as I've been saying for a lot of these SmackDown reports, if it doesn't directly involve the Bloodline in some form or fashion, there's really not a whole lot of captivating material going on with these shows every week. There's other stuff on the show, but a lot of it just isn't very alluring to me. You know, a lot of it too is what I've coined the problem with modern WWE content. The shows are patterned a very particular way, but they're just so lifeless a lot of the time. You know, like I sat here on the Friday show and talked about the formulaic nature of the Dallas TV shows for World Class, how Ken Mantel's approach to booking was to keep things very simple and straightforward a lot of the time. And it's always going to come with its pros and cons. The problem with WWE taking that approach is that they just don't have the same star power that World Class did. The talent pool is not even remotely compatible. Whereas with World Class, at the top of the card, you had the Von Erich Freebird story. In other areas of the card, you also had the Iceman, Devastation Inc. doing their thing. You had Chris Adams and Jimmy Garvin in the lower status of the tier on the card. Like, you had a lot of range with the talents that were being featured back then. In WWE, like I said, you got the Bloodline. That's basically it. At least as far as what is consistently good from week to week on the television program, it varies. You know, as much as I like Gunther and Dom and Rhea Ripley, it's the talent pool surrounding them a lot of the time that doesn't always click with me. And we'll talk about more of this in depth as we run down the show, but this is just one of those details that always stands out when I watch WWE or AEW. Whether I skip over stuff or not, like I said, it's all dependent on who's being featured and whether or not it's something that I really want to see. Because I really don't have a tolerance for bad stuff anymore. I just don't. I don't have the time for it. If something's not immediately clicking with me, if it's not garnering my attention the minute I see it on camera, I just disengage from it. I move on. I might leave it on in the background while I'm doing something else, but it's not something that I'll go out of my way to sit down and invest in. Again, it's just kind of the nature of where we are with modern wrestling. You know, and going back to my discussion on the Bloodline, how it's easily the most captivating thing going on with WWE at the given moment, without a doubt. Apparently there was a lot of story development on Raw this week that I missed out on. Thankfully, they recapped it here so I could catch up with what I missed. Take note, AEW. Instead of just presuming that everybody watching your stupid program knows what's going on 100% of the time, God forbid you take 2 minutes out of your nonsensical television show to reiterate what happened the previous week. God almighty. So here's where we are with the current Bloodline happenings. On last week's show, Roman was very clear that Jey Uso had 1 week to make his decision on whether or not he was Team Bloodline or Team Sami. He'd been hanging about in the rafters circa Crow Sting in 97 for a few weeks. Hadn't been given answers, kind of kept to himself. So Roman was getting impatient. And as of this past Monday night, well, we got our answer. It's Sami Zayn versus Jimmy Uso which Sami ended up winning via cradle. And it was after the match where Jey Uso made his way down through the crowd to confront Jimmy. He stood toe-to-toe with his brother, contemplated whether or not he was going to stab him in the back right then and there. But after they flashed up some images of baby Usos, showing some of their childhood pics, it became evident very quickly that Jey did not have it in his heart to turn on Jimmy. And at first, it looked like Jey was about to side with Sami too, because he goes out to confront him in the aisleway. He gives him the big hug. Everybody's cheering. But as Jey and Sami turn to look at Jimmy, who's obviously selling the distraught of his own brother turning on him, bam! Super kick to the face. Down goes Sami. Jey grabs him. He throws him into the ring so they can do the mass beatdown. And with Sami at a 3-on-1 disadvantage, factoring in Solo Sikoa joining the fray, finally out comes Cody Rhodes as the insurance policy to send the heels packing. And after much speculation with how Jey's influence in the Bloodline story was going to dictate the outcome of the WrestleMania program, well, we have our answer now. Partial answer, that is. Because even though it seems like the obvious is to set up the Usos versus Sami and Owens for the tag belts, they still don't have KO on board yet. Because that's another one of those lingering stories they've got going around right now, that Owens and Sami Zayn are still not on good terms. So he's not quite taken the bait yet. And, even though the whole Jey swerve was sad to see, judging how great Sami and Jey have been together on TV, you kind of look at the timeline. It was pretty obvious this was the end game. The familial bond is always going to be stronger than friendship. So that was the first couple minutes of the show this week. And I was already hooked, just seeing how they would go about following up with the Friday night show. And I actually didn't see any of the Raw footage until they aired the VTR here, so this is a pleasant surprise for me, actually. I had no idea Jey had already sided back with the Bloodline as of this past Monday. I thought they were saving all that for this episode. Turns out they went ahead and blew it off on Raw. And then, of course, they go to the parking lot moments later with Jimmy and Jey arriving at the PPG Center. Fucking Paulie flashing up the one sign like a conceited prick. I love it. And while Paulie is happy to see Jey back on the Bloodline team, Jey's playing it super serious right now. Just telling Paul to let Roman know the next time he sees him, he can let him know that Jey's here live and in living color. And yeah, I didn't mention that yet, but they were in my hometown of Pittsburgh for this show. Could have bought a ticket to see it live. That I could have. But then I saw what the rest of the card was shaping out to be, and I said, yeah, no regrets there. Because as soon as the show opened with the first match, and I heard the words, Fatal 5-Way, I nearly spit my drink out in boiling fury. I'm like, seriously now. Another goddamn multi-man match. They ought to pass a law. Any professional wrestling company that books more than 2 multi-person matches in a given year, they ought to be slapped with a heavy fine. Possible prison sentence. I have to presume that most people watching now know my stance on Fatal 4-Ways, Fatal 5-Ways, 6-pack challenges, 7-way shitstorms, 8-man mayhem, whatever the fucking body count is. Makes no difference to me. If it's not a standard singles or tag match, I usually tune these things out before they even ring the opening bell. I hate the whole everyone fighting each other at the same time. Let's do 87 rapid-fire camera cuts in the opening minute to get everybody motion sick. And then the rest of the match is just 2 dudes in the ring doing shit while everybody else is on the floor either selling or taking a nap. It's so overdone. I mean, I've rarely seen a 3-way match done correctly in the business. Once you start piling more people onto that, it just becomes a giant clusterfuck where nobody gets over. It just becomes a non-stop, endless cycle of moves. For anybody curious, it's Drew McIntyre versus Karrion Kross versus Xavier Woods versus LA Knight. Yeah! Versus Sheamus. The winner faces Gunther for the IC title at WrestleMania. And it's a shame, too. I like some of the guys involved. In an ideal world, I think I would have just preferred them doing a regular McIntyre versus LA Knight match. I mean, no offense to the other guys involved. Cross doesn't really do a whole lot for me at this point. The New Day thing just has go-away heat with me. And, I mean, to be fair, Sheamus already had his 2 title shots, and he lost both of them. There's really not a whole lot of story intrigue there. You know, at least with McIntyre and Knight, the match would have been easier to follow, instead of needlessly cramming in more bodies just to get more people on the show, which is kind of just how this came across on television. It's like, yeah, we got a bunch of people on the roster we need to showcase, so let's just throw them all together in one match and see what happens. It also wouldn't be a WWE match if I didn't include this as a talking point in the conversation. I believe the combined entrances took about a sum total of 4 minutes before they even rang the bell, and at the point they did, everybody wrestled for approximately 2 minutes, and then they went to their first commercial break. I was like, is it any wonder nobody gets invested in wrestling matches anymore? Again, though, it followed the regular pattern of every multi-man match you've ever seen before. Everyone took turns trading spots. They kind of sort of teased alliances for a period of time. I don't think it really worked well in their favor having 2 heels go up against 3 baby faces. I think the dynamics would have worked better if the heels outnumbered the faces, because then you could milk heat spots for longer stretches of time. I mean, in comparison to most AEW multi-person clusterfucks, this one didn't get as muddy or messy the longer it went. I mean, nobody got in each other's way at any point. And, you know, they came up with some clever multi-man spots, I guess. I've seen McIntyre do that thing before where he'll be hanging upside down in the Tree of Woe position, and then he'll basically do a sit-up and give one of the guys a German throw from the turnbuckle. In this case, LA Knight also tried to give Cross a superplex, so they basically did a variation of the stacked-up stupidplex spot. That's a Brian Alvarez quote. I always like that one. The people pop for the rotational deal where Sheamus gave everybody the 10 clubbing blows to the chest on the apron. I would say, per multi-person standards, it was all going relatively well until the finish. And how often is it that you hear me bitch and moan about how things are going so well until the finish? Because evidently the finish ends up ruining the entire segment. In this case, it was incredibly stupid. Okay, so Sheamus and McIntyre end up giving their finishers to LA Knight and Xavier Woods in conjunction. The original referee, I think her name's Jessica Carr, she was already the assigned official for the match. But they wound up doing the double ref pin, where a secondary ref runs in at the end to do a simultaneous pinfall count. And I mean, obviously there are ways to pull this off and not have it look fake and scripted beyond belief. This was not only ridiculously phony with the way they pulled this off, but it was also preposterous. First off, at no point prior in this match did they ever acknowledge that there was a second referee on the floor. To my recollection, I didn't even see this referee appear until literally the split moment before he slid into the ring to count the duplicate pinfall. He just appeared. Okay, second off, if they were going to do this double ref spot, would it have hurt them to bother explaining why or how there was a second official needed at ringside to begin with? In a traditional circumstance, you would utilize second referees on the floor whenever you have battle royals or matches where there's a lot of chaotic shit happening at a given time, where the second referee would be useful to try and restore order when the other ref's vision is obstructed. there are times and circumstances where this would make sense. The problem was that they never did any of that. I just saw a second referee pop into the screen for this finish, and I'm like, where the hell did this fucker come from? Literally from out of the void. This ref just snuck in and counted a duplicate pinfall with Jessica Carr. And we were all supposed to just look at it and be like, oh yeah, guess there was a second referee out there the whole entire time. Which there clearly wasn't. And then, of course, there's the third thing that I found at fault with this. Potentially a fourth if I really wanted to go on another tangent on why I fucking hate multi-person man matches. Because that's obviously where they're going with this. It's going to be a three-way with Sheamus, McIntyre, and Gunther at the pay-per-view. And I'm just going to wind up getting pissed off thinking about it. But my main issue is with the fact that they booked a multi-man number one contenders match. And then by the end, it's a complete waste of fucking time. There was no winner. And instead of having Adam Pearce come out there and announce what they're going to do, straight out of the Mike Tenay playbook, they do this finish. Sheamus and McIntyre argue for a little bit. The referees argue for a little bit. And it's to the back. And all of a sudden, we're at an interview segment with Kayla Braxton and Paul Heyman. And Kayla pretty much summed it up like, oh, that's an unfortunate turn of events. Anyway, on to my guest, Paulie Dangerously. She didn't actually refer to him as such. So, well, first of all, fuck that match. Second off, Paul essentially lit a fire under Cody's ass and said that he got in the middle of Bloodline business on Monday night. I can't do Heyman's promos justice, but he basically inferred that Roman was going to beat Cody at WrestleMania, and Cody would then have to pick the time and place to acknowledge our tribal chief. I was kind of distracted watching Kayla's reaction to Paul the whole time. I don't even really know how to describe it, other than her just looking at Paulie with a confused, befuddled, pondering facial expression. Probably thinking to herself, has this man always had three chins? Or maybe she was wondering what she was planning on eating for dinner that night. I don't really know. And then we came back from break to hear Sheamus and Drew arguing at each other in the locker room. That was about 30 whole seconds of TV time they allotted to this. Very riveting programming. And then came time for the announcement of our first inductee into the 2023 Hall of Fame class. Oddly enough, it was also great timing for them to turn it into a TV angle. Almost like it was pre-planned. And I guess I can start with dropping the bombshell announcement. It's Rey Mysterio. And you had to figure they were going to give him the floor to come out here and do a promo, talking about how much this moment means to him, how much of an honor it is for his career. And as soon as they hit Rey's theme, I started counting down the clock to see how long it would take before Dominic interrupted him, just to come out and be a pest. And it took about as much time as I anticipated. 2 whole seconds. Straight out of the AEW playbook. Guy comes out to try and do a promo, immediately gets cut off. So here comes Dom and the rest of the Judgment Day. Dom is getting, I wanted to say showered with booze. I think it's more accurate to say these people were concurrently pulling down their pants and dropping a big old doozy on this poor fucker. Diarrheal explosion of booze. He's shitting all over Rey's parade. Meanwhile, the crowd's shitting all over him. Saying he's been waiting his whole career to get this moment, all at the expense of sacrificing holidays and big events for Dom when he was a kid. And as the Judgment Day all get in the ring to confront Rey, here comes the now babyface Legado del Fantasma. We've already alluded to Santos Escobar's random out-of-the-blue face turn. Now I guess it's the whole entire group that's a babyface now. And at first, I thought they were setting up some kind of 8-man tag, but it ended up just being a regular 6-man tag with the guys. And meanwhile, Ray, the guy they just inducted as the first member into the 2023 Hall of Fame class, total afterthought by the end of this. All right. I had to pause the recording. Somebody was knocking at the door. I have absolutely no idea where I left off here. So I'm going to have to take up precious time by scrolling back through my notes. I think we just finished. Yeah, we finished the Ray segment, so we're already past that. We didn't talk about the match yet. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. All right, cool. Poor planning. So, the Ray Hall of Fame segment, that was a thing that happened. So they come back from a commercial for the start of the 6-man, and Ray's on the floor, just kind of standing around watching with his chin on his hand, probably contemplating whether or not he should have used a condom. It's funny, because I like the idea that they give Ray a few minutes to go out there and do a celebratory promo, but after getting interrupted, they just say, "Oh, sorry, Ray. Time is money, you know. Raw rolls on. But feel free to stand at ringside and watch your son be a douchebag." The match itself was fine, I guess. I kind of blanked out during parts of it. Might have just been the participants involved, if I'm being honest. And again, this is something I always revert back to, but the lack of compelling characters on this program is just kind of the reality of it. You know, I've done 739 different tangents on how the Judgment Day faction is just old news at this point. I like everybody in the group, but the faction's kind of overstayed its welcome. It's gone through so many twists and turns. I don't think it's really done a whole lot for the career trajectory of anybody involved. Possibly discount Rhea. And the Legado team is another one of those units where there's a clear top guy at the core of the group. The other dudes are lackeys. It's kind of my problem with Imperium. Not necessarily the problem with all three guys. It's just Gunther's clearly the standout guy. The other two are just crash dummies. It's not really a faction anybody takes that seriously. And the same can be held true for the Legado guys. It ends up breaking down with everybody. Rhea ends up catching Zelina Vega and throwing her into the two Legado teammates. Meanwhile, the other Legado lackey tried rolling up Dominic in the ring, but Priest ended up giving him a thrust kick so Dom could cradle the Legado dude and pin him. The real bulk of the conversation comes with the post-match angle, because Dom gets back on the mic and tells his Judgment Day goons to leave the ring to him. He just wants to have a heart-to-heart with his dad. And when Ray gets in the ring, Dom talks about how the only Hall of Fame they ought to be inducting Ray into is the Deadbeat Dad Hall of Fame. And he's still trying to goad Ray into punching him. Gives him another face palm. Obviously, the big line was Dom saying that he should have been Eddie's dad. To which I said, shucks. If only Eddie won that ladder match 20-something years ago. Could have changed the entire foundation of the Rey Mysterio family legacy right there. My God. I'm clearly kidding. But I love the way they did this because, again, the whole story is them building to the angle where Ray finally punches Dom in the face and obviously accepts the challenge for WrestleMania. I mean, it's clear where this is all headed. But they did just enough here where Ray managed to get back at Dom for running his mouth a little bit. Didn't physically lay a hand on him, but when Dom went to charge at Ray near the ropes and Ray sidestepped him, Dom went flying out to the floor and he got all bent out of shape and started screaming at Ray, "You can't do that to me! You're gonna fight me!" Just being a total pompous prick. It's good stuff. You know, they're still milking the idea that Ray doesn't want any part of it, but you know something's going to happen in the next couple weeks to where Dom finally says or does something to get under Ray's skin enough to where Ray's finally going to rear back and lay one in on Dom. Not sure what that one thing will be that sends Ray over the edge, but it is keeping me hooked. You know what's not keeping me hooked? Charlotte Flair's hideous blue jumpsuit. Seriously, what the fuck was that? Is she auditioning for a role with the Blue Man Group? They're going to have to call it the Blue Person Group now? Well, while you all speculate on that, we can quickly go over this Ricochet, Brawny the Strowman versus Viking Raiders match at the top of hour 2. Honestly, there wasn't a whole lot to note about it. It was a thing that happened on the show. The Viking Raiders have been back for... Oh, God. What are we going on now? Like 4 or 5 months? Have they been involved with anything remotely important since their return? Aside from working a few underneath matches here and there? And whatever's going on with Van Halen, or whatever her fucking name is now. The chick that used to be Sarah Logan until she shaved her head and started dressing up like a Viking. I don't know. I mean, I watched it. I wasn't bored. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the end game is for both parties involved. Not just Ariel and Frodo, or whatever they changed Hanson and Rose names to. I still have no idea. But, like, the Strowman Ricochet thing just screams makeshift pairing to me. It's like the pure definition of, let's take two guys that we have nothing for creatively and just shoehorn them together in a tag team. It just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, they work moderately well as a tag team. I did note the spot before the commercial pitch where they had Strowman try to bail Ricochet out onto the floor on top of the Viking Raiders and almost overshot them completely. That was wonderful. I mean, I don't hate the team. I just really don't think it's using either guy as effectively as they could. You know, Ricochet was already fine on his own. I didn't really see the need to stick him in a tag team. It was Strowman. I can go either way with it. I kind of think they butchered his run. Just way too much overexposure with the guy, and that Omos program did him no favors, as short-lived as it was. He was always suited for the Andre role, where he could come in, work programs sparingly, not get overused, mainly being used as a special attraction. I don't know. Instead, they quickly turned it into him just being yet another dude on the roster. He's there. He's not really adding or detracting from the show in any way, but he's just kind of a guy. You know, the people get into him when he does the hot tag and wrecks shop on everybody. I still hate that fucking choo-choo train shoulder tackle spot he does. It always looks so stupid when guys have to just stand there and wait for Strowman to barrel into them. You know, they essentially just wind up taking their own bump. It looks retarded. You know, at least here, the one Viking Raider sidestepped Strowman, so he flew over the announce table and ate shit. That was at least funny. And then we got the stupid finish where Van Halen stalked Ricochet up the ring apron so he could tease a 450 splash, only for Hanson to move out of the way, catch him with a Harlem sidekick, and then put him away with a diving splash. You know, the execution of the splash wasn't the part that sucked. What sucked was Ricochet having to pretend to be scared of a 120-pound girl while she, and I quote, put a spell on him. The words of Michael Cole. What, so you're telling me they got the Viking Raiders doing the hocus-pocus clown bullshit too? They getting their education from the School of Wyatt? Fuck off with that shit. Put a spell on Ricochet. What is this? Danhausen. So moving on. This was the part of the show where we found out that next week it's going to be Sheamus and McIntyre, with the winner getting to face Gunther at Mania. Anyone else smell a fucked finish in the works? Or am I the only one? Maybe it's just me smelling Charlotte Flair's wretched ring work. Boom! Fucking nailed that transition. Yeah, I guess I forgot to mention that earlier. The whole skit in the back where Charlotte was dressed in a blue jumpsuit. Yeah, she wanted Adam Pearce to book her in a match. I guess because Pearce didn't think to book a full card before the show aired. So he's like, yeah, sure, what the hell? Got some time to kill? I can find you an opponent. No problem. And guess who it was? That's right. Shotzi. The former Shotzi Blackheart. Now just going by Shotzi, apparently. Which is kind of a shame because I could have started giving her the nickname Shotzi Skidmark. But they took away her last name. Gosh darn it. Now what do we call her? I don't know. How about Botchzy? Because she sure does an ample amount of that when she's wrestling. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering to yourself, well, obviously, there's no way Tommy skipped over this match. Two of my all-time favorite female wrestlers in the ring at the same time. Who wouldn't want to watch a Charlotte Flair Botsy TV match? It has all the makings of a 5-star match on paper, right? Yeah, maybe. If I was drunk, blind, and had someone holding a gun to my head. Of course I didn't fucking watch this. Did you actually think I would? Give me more excuses to talk about how horrible Charlotte is as a professional wrestler. You know, but even in this case, it's not even fair. Because her working with this green tank-riding Gen Z botch fest. May as well hang up the boots now if you think you're going to get anything halfway decent out of this chick. So, that shaved off a good 10 or so minutes of my TV viewing experience this week. Good call, Pierce. Needed that designated piss break in the show somewhere. Just in time to come back for the main event segment. Circling back to where we all started. Here to come the Usos. And it's time to hear Jay's explanation for why he done gone and done did it. Why'd he done gone and done did Sammy dirty like that? Can it be any more apparent how Caucasian I am? Well, as to be expected, Jay's rationalization for turning on Sammy was pretty much what I summed up in the opening VTR. All Sammy had to do was follow orders and take command. Fall in line. But he was too selfish. He was never Bloodline, and no matter how much he tried to fit in, he was never bred for the group. But it eats away with Jey Uso more than anything, because Sammy earned his trust over a period of months. After all the doubt, Jay and Sammy finally got on good terms after Sammy made the right call in the War Games, and in one night, when it came time for him to make the right decision again, he threw it all away. And with Sammy out of the picture now, that leaves the Bloodline with one problem to resolve. The Cody Rhodes problem. And right on cue, here comes Cody. Saying if the Usos have a problem with Cody, they don't have to talk about it. They can do about it. While the Usos are encouraging Cody to stay back, here comes Sami Zayn to jump attack Jay, which obviously opens up the door for Cody to run in and take the fight to the Usos. They had a moderately short but pretty fun brawl to close out the show. People were into it. Cody spent about half of it trying to rip off his dress shirt and utterly failing in the process. I thought that was funny. I also like Sami charging at Jade toward the announce table and basically just running up to him and giving him a hug. And then they both just kind of fell over the table. That was very awkward. And it ends with the babyfaces standing strong. Usos got foiled in their plans, but technically, they're not out of the woods yet. Because Cody's going to be preoccupied with Roman at WrestleMania. It still kind of leaves Sami to hang out to dry. He's still got to fend for himself right now. He has no backing support. Gee. If only there was a friend that could step in during his time of need. Possibly to lend a hand to Sami in his pursuit of taking down the Bloodline. If only. If only. Yeah, beats me. I got nothing. I can't think of anybody. I can't think of anyone that would want to come to Sami's aid. Damn. Well, I guess Sami's on his own. Good luck. Or perhaps I am merely joshing, and there's more to the story that is yet to unfold. Almost like they're planning this out in advance. It's almost as if this is predetermined. It's almost as if they know what they're doing and they actually have an end game in mind. You know, it's odd. I watch so much wrestling where it's clear that there is no end game and nobody knows what the fuck's going on half the time. It's like when you get one of those moments where there seems to be a clear-cut direction of where you're taking a storyline. It's almost mind-boggling to think, wow, they're actually pre-planning something in advance. They actually have a direction. They actually have an end game. Holy cow. What a novel concept in pro wrestling. I still wish they could develop more captivating stories aside from the Bloodline. And this show wasn't even half bad compared to the usual. I mean, just to kind of put a cap on it, I'll go back to what I said during the first part of the review. Modern WWE content is world-class television circa mid-80s with about 80% less star power. The shows are very dry. They're not usually all that exciting. And, you know, while sometimes it's nice to have a laid-back professional wrestling show where there aren't 14,000 different things happening at a given time, it would also be nice to watch a wrestling show where one main focal story isn't carrying the entire God-blessed show. Just throwing it out there. I mean, we've already got MJF doing that on the other channel. They ain't giving him a whole lot of backing support. The WrestleMania hype for me, outside the Roman Cody match and the possible Uso, Zayn, and Owens match that is yet to be made official, there really ain't a whole lot sucking me in at the given moment. Gunther doing a three-way with Drew and Sheamus isn't really setting my world on fire. I think I'd rather just see Gunther and Drew go at it in a singles match. LA Knight, it's unfortunate, but judging how quickly he was thrown under the bus in that five-way, it really doesn't look like he's being factored into the Mania card in any significant manner. They might book something on the show where he gets punked out by a veteran or something like that, but is that really the best use out of the guy? He's one of the most over dudes on the SmackDown show right now. It's amazing. Despite the attempted burial, the guy's still getting over. Lashley and Wyatt mercifully looks like the majority of that feud's being built up on Raw, which is good, because fuck everything about that program. Rhea and Charlotte, like I said before, If the end result isn't Rhea beating Charlotte clean for the title, then that match can go piss up a rope. I mean, what else do we have right now? At least on the SmackDown side of things. Right now, I'm just not seeing a whole lot. I mean, I'll talk more about the Raw side of things once we do the preview show in a couple weeks. I mean, I've been following a couple stories here and there. Haven't really kept up with much of it, but some of those match decisions are a head scratcher to me. Brock Lesnar versus Omos being the standout. Good Lord. For the time being, there's enough there to keep me engaged with the main event picture, but they still got a few weeks to really hard sell me on this card. It still doesn't have the vibe of a WrestleMania type event. Right now I'm getting SummerSlam vibes more than anything else. It's like, yeah, some of the matches seem important, but part of the appeal of the WrestleMania event is that it's supposed to be their effort to pull out all the stops and give us the big time attraction matches. Are we actually going to get that? I think that's yet to be seen. Guess we'll find out, though. I mean, they got 2 nights to fill, so there's probably going to be some filler material in there somewhere. But I guess we'll find out. Anyhow, yeah, I think we made some good time on this one. Again, if you're bummed out about the shorter show, sorry. I just don't have the time to really do any void filler at this point because, like I said, I got to watch this WrestleMania 10 show, and that's already going to take a few hours, so got to finish that up and roll on with everything else. Raw rolls on. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching the show. Make sure you tune in on Friday for the regular Dynamite report and the continuation of our other part of the Retro Review series. And then next Monday, we will be doing the Retro Raw, SmackDown, and the WrestleMania 10 card rundown. So we'll make up for it this week by giving you a jam-packed episode the following Monday. How about that? That make everybody happy? I hope so. Anyhow, take care all. Thanks for watching. Peace out.